Hi, I'm Hannah DeWitt, and this is my senior thesis. Yep, on YouTube. Due to a global pandemic, my graduating class is having our thesis gallery show on the internet, and my oral defense is to be submitted by video. For the viewers at home, I might as well explain real quick what an oral defense is. Basically, you work on a series of art and a thesis statement to back it up, and before you can graduate, you stand in front of a panel and orally defend your work. Basically, you try to answer the big so what. You're supposed to defend why the viewer should care about your work in the context of art as a whole. So that's what I'm here to answer. I'm here to answer the so what. So many people think that my work is about me, and at first glance, I definitely can't blame them. This is me, and this is me, and this is also me. But believe it or not, none of this work is actually about me, or at least not primarily. Although my own narrative is almost irrevocably woven into my work, this work is not about me. This is about so much more than just my own narrative, or the insistence that trauma narratives matter in general. This is about the long line of women who have come before me, on whose shoulders I stand. This is about the women that will come after me, about those who will stand on my shoulders in return. This is about the history of female-specific victimization in art and the future of art about said victimization. This is about forcing the viewer to care in a world oversaturated with things to care about. This is my interior scroll. I will make you look at the personal clutter, the persistence of feelings. Yeah, if you didn't catch that, that was a Carolee Schneemann reference. My work wouldn't be the same without her, or any of the great women artists, Nochlin reference intended, that I've been researching this year. I've been looking at artists like Carolee Schneemann and Anna Mendieta, as well as some historical artists. The life of Artemisia Gentileschi in particular resonates with me. In fact, I even included all of their names and more in this work. This piece is titled, "It Is Not Just Me," and in it I appropriate the names of other women. I started off using the names of women throughout history, artists, activists, and iconic characters that had experienced victimization due to their womanhood, as well as women who had made work about similar topics. From historical figures like Artemisia and Lucretia, to more modern artists and public figures like Anna and Yoko. I wanted to show that my experiences are not in a vacuum. Then I wanted to bring the piece into the modern day by including everyday women. So I made a call for names on Instagram. I made a post asking for any woman or primarily woman-aligned non-binary person who personally related to the piece, if they wanted to be a part of it, to send me their names. The response I got was overwhelming. Over 50 people sent me their names, some even sending me their stories and traumas. It was an honor to add each of their names to the piece. One of the participants thanked me for, quote, collecting us all, and I feel that that simple phrase perfectly sums up what I was going for with the artwork. That was admittedly a bit of a tangent, but I do think the references to my artistic influences are very clear in this piece. I'm fully aware that I'm not the first person to make work about female-specific victimization, or the first person to make work about anything for that matter, and I'm definitely looking towards those who have come before me. In fact, I want to take a quick look at some work from my artistic influences so that I can show you what about each artist has guided me through my thesis. Schneemann's interior scroll forces the viewer to acknowledge what is considered grossly personal, while Meat Joy uses the visceral imagery that I'm channeling in Flesh Flinch. Mendieta's rape piece embodies all of the horrible ways I'm forcing the viewer to join me in my discomfort. Gentileschi's Judas slaying Holofernes is so much more deliberately passionate than other paintings of the same scenario at the time, and although I don't want to pigeonhole her by constantly seeing her works as a reference to her own trauma, I definitely think that this piece holds a certain level of power that just couldn't be made by someone who didn't deeply know the ache of womanhood. Unlike Gentileschi, who mainly focused on painting, which was to be expected at that time in art history, I lean more towards the interdisciplinary, like Anna Mendieta or even Kiki Smith. This series isn't all in one medium, because for each piece, the materiality is intentional and chosen specifically for the piece. For example, I made Flesh Flinch out of silicone, not only because it gave the piece an extremely soft, fleshy, lifelike quality, but also because silicone is a material known for its use in the production of sex toys, so that adds another layer of meaning through materiality. As a body of work often does, I built off the concept from Flesh Flinch for another piece, Beating a Dead Horse. In this piece, I add an element of performance by giving the replica of my own torso CPR chest compressions until I physically can't anymore. You can watch the full performance by using the link in the description. For my pieces Anyone's Guess and Therapy, I used my own medical paperwork as a medium, but by obscuring certain parts of said paperwork, I'm making the narrative more universal, or entirely universal in the case of Anyone's Guess. Since only the skeleton of sentence structure remains, these could be anyone's therapy notes. They could even be yours. I use cellophane in Like Meat, which has both preserving, restricting, and dehumanizing properties, as I become an effigy of meat at the grocery store, prepackaged and sealed for freshness, but ultimately a consumer good. Materiality has always been important in my work, but sometimes you have to make do with what you have in order to overcome certain obstacles. My piece, The Treachery of Images, was made entirely out of found materials and imagery while stuck in self-quarantine. This piece wrestles with an element of trauma that is often ignored, one's own experience with masturbation. The Treachery of Images uses found imagery to illustrate masturbation as a form of psychological self-harm. The sister to this piece, Ce n'est pas un orgasme, uses found materials in a very different way. In a collaboration with my creative partner Vincex, we took the idea of an orgasm and removed the burden of gaze and imagery. This piece only shows the physical relic of an orgasm, which serves as a foil to the painful experience with hypersexuality after trauma that The Treachery of Images illustrates. Basically, my work takes a feminist approach to the concept of trauma. As a disclaimer, I'd like to mention that I am fully aware of the fact that men can and do experience similar traumas, and in no way am I trying to say that they don't. I'm just specifically focusing on how and why trauma seems to be an inherent part of womanhood, and I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a woman who makes art about trauma, and why that art is received the way it is. To put it bluntly, too many people look at my art and say I'm playing the rape card, as if that's a card to be played. As if that makes my art any less valid in concept, as if that removes from it the title of fine art, as if making art about trauma means that I in some way owe my career to those who traumatized me, as if I'm expected to at some point move on and become more pleasant to witness, as if this is not a tale as old as time, told again and again by women written out of history. So here I am, at the end of my presentation, trying to form a solid conclusion and satiate the ever-consuming and constant so what. Too long didn't read there's a history of artists, particularly female artists, being dismissed for having work that is too emotional or personal narrative. I've been personally told that's not fine art, that's art therapy, and no one is going to care how you feel, they're only going to care what you think. This culture around removing the artist from the art is conveniently happening right when a lot of people who have been excluded and dismissed are finally starting to make work about their own exclusion and dismissal. You want to ask me, so what? My answer to that is that women have been making work about systematic abuse and normalized psychological, physical, and sexual violence, and that work has been met in response only with so what for too long.